Share your testimony. I want to encourage you to share your testimony with somebody this week. You know, the Apostle Paul was one of the greatest church planters, one of the greatest evangelists, one of the greatest Christians in all of history. But it's very interesting. When he gets arrested in Acts chapter 22 and he's brought before the Roman and Jewish authorities, Paul, who was an expert in Latin, Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, and other languages, Paul, who was an absolute expert on Old Testament law, Paul, who was very current with all the philosophers and intellectuals of his day, Paul didn't do any arguing or debating or evidence giving. What Paul did in Acts 22 and later in Acts 26 with King Agrippa, he just shared his story. He just gave his testimony. I want to encourage you to realize your testimony is extremely powerful. It's something that God can use to build a relationship bridge between you and the other person. Your testimony has the power to bypass intellectual arguments because there's no better argument for Christianity than your changed life. Your testimony builds interest. Everybody loves a story. They don't want to hear you quoting great philosophers and intellectuals. People want to hear your story. And when you share your testimony, you come across to people not as a professional salesman trying to proselyte them to Christianity. You come across as a satisfied customer because you're telling them how God has changed your life. When you share your testimony, you're able to do this with anybody. You don't have to be an intellectual. This blind man, he said, I don't know. I was lost, I was blind, but now I see. You don't have to have been a Christian a long time. Even if you just met Jesus yesterday, you can start sharing your testimony today. And one thing I like about sharing my story is I can do it in 1 minute, I can do it in 3 minutes, I can do it in 30 minutes. I just talk about before I met Jesus, how I met Jesus, and since I met Jesus. When I was younger, a group of us were in Manhattan in New York City doing evangelism. When we had some spare time, a friend of mine and myself, we'd get on an elevator, walk in, and he would say to me, "So Dave, what was that you were talking about, this Jesus thing?" And I would give my testimony as we rode to the top of the top floor. I would start out, before I met Jesus, and then talk about how I met Jesus, and talk about since I met Jesus. In a little over a minute, 2 minutes, as we rode up in that elevator, people got to hear the gospel. In fact, one lady was supposed to get off. Her friend said, "We're supposed to get off at this floor." And she said, wait a minute, I want to hear the rest of this story. We got to share our testimony, very brief bit, with hundreds of people that day, just riding up and down the elevator. I would share mine on the way up, he would share his on the way back. It's fun, it's powerful, it's effective, it's your story. God wants to use you to make a difference. Share your testimony. Share it with somebody today.